My name is Evelyn Carter, and at 35, I thought I knew my husband better than anyone. For 8 years, Richard was my partner, my confidant, the man who held my hand through every challenge. But the day I woke up unable to remember where I'd been that morning, everything began to unravel. He called it stress. The doctors called it cognitive decline. My friends stopped calling altogether. And when I finally discovered what was really happening, it was almost too late. The courtroom revelation that followed would expose a truth so calculated, so chilling, that even the judge struggled to maintain composure. If you're watching this, I'd love to know where you are watching from today. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories. The chandelier above me sparkled like 1,000 tiny stars, each crystal reflecting the faces of Seattle's elite as they mingled beneath it. I adjusted the diamond necklace at my throat, the one Richard had given me for our 5th anniversary, and smiled at the approaching donors. This was my world, the Carter Foundation Gala, an evening I'd spent 6 months planning down to the last detail. "Evelyn, darling, you've outdone yourself," Margaret Whitmore cooed, air-kissing both my cheeks. "The silent auction alone will raise $250,000 for literacy programs." "Thank you, Margaret. It's been a labor of love." I felt Richard's hand slide around my waist, his grip just a fraction too tight. "My wife is too modest," Richard announced to the small circle gathering around us, his CEO charisma on full display. "The Carter Foundation has become what it is because of the vision I brought to it. Evelyn's been wonderful at executing the details, of course." I felt my smile freeze. The vision I brought? I'd founded this organization 3 years ago, before Richard's tech company had even gone public. But the donors were nodding appreciatively at him, and I found myself doing what I'd done increasingly often lately, swallowing the correction that burned on my tongue. "Actually, Richard, I think you're remembering it wrong. The foundation was—" "Sweetheart," he interrupted with a gentle laugh, squeezing my waist, "you've been so stressed lately. Remember? I helped you draft the initial charter. It's okay to forget things when you're working too hard." He turned to our audience with an indulgent smile. "She's been a bit forgetful recently. I keep telling her to slow down." Heat crept up my neck. Several people exchanged knowing glances, the kind that said, "Poor thing, working herself to exhaustion." I wanted to protest, to remind everyone that I had a master's degree in nonprofit management and had built this from nothing, but Richard was already steering the conversation elsewhere, his hand never leaving my waist. Later, in the back of our town car, the city lights streaking past like liquid gold, the mask finally fell. "Do you have any idea how you embarrassed me tonight?" Richard's voice was cold steel wrapped in silk. I stared at him, genuinely confused. "What are you talking about?" The gala was a success. We exceeded our fundraising goal by— "Your speech, Evelyn. You rambled for 10 minutes about empowering communities when I specifically told you to keep it to 5 minutes and focus on corporate partnerships. The Patterson Group CEO was there, and I'm trying to secure them as a major donor. But instead of being professional, you went off script." I didn't ramble. I spoke from the heart about why this work matters. "You made us look unprofessional." He was staring out the window now, jaw tight. "You've been off lately. Scattered. I think you need to see someone." "See someone?" "Richard, I'm fine. I'm just tired." Tired people don't forget entire conversations. Dr. Lang is a friend from the club. Excellent psychiatrist. "I've already made you an appointment for Thursday." I opened my mouth to argue, but something in his tone made me hesitate. Had I been forgetting things? There was that meeting with the caterer I'd apparently rescheduled without remembering. And last week, I couldn't find my phone for hours, only to discover it in the refrigerator. How had it gotten there? "I don't need a psychiatrist," I said weakly. "It's just a consultation. For me, if nothing else. I worry about you, Evelyn. You're my wife. Let me take care of you." That night, I sat in my home office, the small room Richard had designated as mine when we'd moved into his penthouse, and opened my leather journal. Writing had always grounded me. I dated the page, September 15th. Tonight's gala was successful by every metric, but Richard made me feel like I'd failed somehow. He says I'm forgetful, but I remember everything about the foundation. Don't I? Maybe I am working too hard. Maybe he's right. I paused, pen hovering over paper. When had I started doubting myself so much? The appointment with Dr. Lang was in a sleek downtown office with too much chrome and too little warmth. Dr. Lang himself was 50-ish, with gray temples and an unsettling smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Your husband tells me you've been experiencing some stress," he said, folding his hands on his desk. "I wouldn't say experiencing. I run a nonprofit. Some stress is normal. Memory issues? Confusion? Moments where time seems to slip away." I shifted in my chair. "No more than anyone else." He made a note. "I'm going to start you on something mild, just to take the edge off. Anxiety can manifest in subtle ways. Forgetfulness, irritability, difficulty focusing." "I don't feel anxious." "That's often how it begins." He scrawled a prescription. "Take one before bed. You'll sleep better, think more clearly. I'll see you in 2 weeks." I took the pills because Richard insisted. The first night, I slept deeply, dreamlessly. The second night, the same. By the fourth night, I woke to find my alarm going off at noon, for missed calls from my assistant Maya, and absolutely no memory of the morning. "You turned off your alarm and went back to sleep," Richard explained patiently when I called him in panic. "I tried to wake you, but you were insisting you'd already called the office. I don't remember any of that. The medication is helping you rest, that's all. Your body needed it." A week later, Maya was gone. "I had to let her go," Richard told me over dinner, cutting his steak with precise movements. "She was gossiping about you to other staff, saying you'd become unreliable." "Maya would never. We've worked together for 2 years. Evelyn, she showed me the texts. I can forward them if you'd like, but I thought it would only hurt you more." He reached across the table, covering my hand with his. "I've hired a new assistant, David. He comes highly recommended, and he'll report directly to me so we can keep better track of your schedule." Something felt wrong, but I was so tired. The pills made everything soft around the edges. My phone started acting strangely. Text messages from friends would appear as read before I'd seen them. The calls would go straight to voicemail without ringing. When I mentioned it to Richard, he suggested I was probably just distracted and didn't notice the notifications. "You're spending too much time on that thing anyway," he said, taking it from my hand one evening. "Let me have IT look at it." He returned it 3 days later. All fixed. Just some software issues. But my friend Laura didn't call anymore. Neither did my college roommate Julie. When I tried to reach out, my messages seemed to disappear into the void. October arrived with falling leaves and a growing sense of disconnection. I sat in on a board meeting for Carter Technologies, Richard's company, though I owned 30% of the shares we'd purchased together. "We're restructuring the voting protocol," Richard's attorney announced. "Just temporarily, to streamline decision-making while we pursue this merger with TechVista." I frowned at the document in front of me. "This removes my voting rights entirely." "Just temporarily," Richard assured me from the head of the table. "You've been so overwhelmed with the foundation work, I thought you'd appreciate one less thing to worry about. It's only until the merger is complete. 6 months, maximum." I should have argued, should have demanded to keep my rights. But I was so exhausted, and the words on the page kept blurring together, and everyone was looking at me with expressions ranging from pity to impatience. I signed. The weekend before Halloween, I drove to my parents' house in Bellevue. My father opened the door, and his face went through a series of expressions I couldn't quite read: shock, concern, something that looked like fear. "Evelyn? Honey, is everything all right?" "Of course. Why wouldn't it be?" He pulled me into the house, calling for my mother. They both stared at me with the same worried expression. "You've lost so much weight," my mother said, taking my hands. "When did you last eat properly?" "I eat. Richard and I have dinner together most nights." "You seem—" My father hesitated. "Dimmer. Not yourself. Are you feeling okay? Is Richard treating you well?" The question struck me as odd. "He's wonderful. He's been so patient with me lately. I've been having some issues with memory and focus, but he's helping me through it." My parents exchanged a glance that I pretended not to see. Maybe you should come stay with us for a few days, my mother suggested. Just to rest. I can't. There's too much to do at the foundation. And Richard would worry. That night, back in the penthouse, I woke to use the bathroom. The clock read 3:17 a.m. As I walked past the master bedroom, I heard Richard's voice, low, talking to someone on the phone. Not much longer. The board is already questioning her capacity. Once they see the pattern documented by Lang, they'll support a full medical evaluation. Then everything transfers to me as primary decision-maker for both the foundation and the company shares. I froze in the hallway, my hand pressed against the cool wall. She doesn't suspect anything. The medication keeps her compliant, confused. Perfect. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. I crept back to the guest room where I'd been sleeping lately. Richard said I was restless and disturbed his sleep, and sat on the bed, shaking. He couldn't have been talking about me. Could he? I looked at the pill bottle on the nightstand. Then I looked at my journal, at the increasingly erratic handwriting, at the entries I didn't remember making. And for the first time in months, a crystal-clear thought cut through the fog. Something is very, very wrong. The next morning, I pretended to take my pill. I held it under my tongue until Richard left the bathroom, then spit it into a tissue and hid it in my pocket. My hands shook with the deception. "You look better today," Richard commented over breakfast, scrolling through his phone. "Brighter." "I feel good. I was thinking I'd go into the foundation office today. David has everything under control. Why don't you rest? You've been pushing yourself." "I'd like to work." His eyes flicked up from the screen, assessing. "Of course. Whatever you need." But when I arrived at the foundation office, I found my key card no longer worked. David, young, efficient, oddly cold, met me at the door with an apologetic smile that wasn't apologetic at all. "Mr. Carter asked me to work from home with you for the next few weeks. The office is undergoing some IT security updates." No one told me about security updates. Mr. Carter handled it. "Shall we head back? I have your laptop and all the files you'll need." I felt trapped but couldn't articulate why. I let him drive me home, watched him set up a workspace at my dining room table, and felt like a prisoner in my own life. Over the next few days, things began to disappear. My car keys, I'd find them in the freezer. My planner with months of notes, discovered under the bathroom sink. Important documents, tucked inside the oven. Each time, Richard or David would find them. Their expressions a perfect blend of concern and pity. "You really should let Dr. Lang increase your dosage," Richard said after the car keys incident. "This is getting worse." But I wasn't taking the pills anymore. I was getting sharper, clearer, and what I was seeing terrified me. I had another appointment with Dr. Lang scheduled for November 3rd. I sat across from him, studying his face as he asked his questions. "Richard tells me you're still having episodes. Hiding things, forgetting conversations." I don't remember hiding anything. That's the nature of these episodes. The mind protects itself from the memory of the confusion. He adjusted his glasses. "I'm increasing your prescription. 2 pills at night now instead of 1. What exactly am I taking, Dr. Lang?" "A mild sedative. Anxiolytic properties. Very common, very safe." Something in his voice rang false. I took the new prescription but had no intention of filling it. The board presentation was scheduled for November 10th. I'd been working with David on the Foundation's quarterly report, enrollment numbers, donation tracking, program outcomes. I knew this material inside and out. But when I stood up in front of the Foundation board and clicked to my first slide, my breath caught. The numbers were wrong. All of them. Donations understated, program costs inflated, enrollment numbers that made no sense. I fumbled through my notes, trying to reconcile what I was seeing with what I knew to be true. "I'm sorry. These slides, they're not right. If I could just—" "It's okay, Evelyn." Richard's voice came from the back of the room. I hadn't even known he was there. He walked forward, took the clicker from my hand. "I've got this. Why don't you sit down?" I sat, humiliation burning through me, while Richard smoothly presented a completely different set of numbers. Accurate ones, I realized, the ones I'd prepared. But the board had already seen me stumble, seen me fail. After the meeting, locked in my office bathroom, I cried until my throat hurt. When I finally emerged, David was packing up his laptop. "Rough day," he said neutrally. "Mr. Carter said you should head home and rest." "David, did you change my presentation slides?" His face remained perfectly blank.
"No, ma'am."
"You must have uploaded the wrong version." But I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. That evening, I sat in my home office and reread my journal, really read it. The entries grew increasingly erratic starting in late September, right when I started the medication. But I also found something else. Words I didn't remember writing, in handwriting that was almost mine, but not quite. Entries about forgetting things, about confusion, about feeling overwhelmed. Someone had been writing in my journal. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. "Mrs. Carter? This is Jennifer from Dr. Lang's office. I'm calling to confirm Mr. Carter's appointment for tomorrow at 2 o'clock. My blood went cold. "I'm sorry, did you say Mr. Carter's appointment?" A pause. "Oh no. Oh my God, I called the wrong number. Please forget the line went dead." I sat staring at my phone. Richard was seeing Dr. Lang. Richard had therapy session notes, which meant I couldn't finish the thought because it was too enormous, too terrible. The next morning, I called my college roommate Laura. She was a lawyer now, somewhere in Portland. It took 3 tries before she picked up. "Evelyn? Oh my God. Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for weeks."
"What?"
"I haven't gotten any calls from you. I've left at least 10 messages. I was starting to think. Evelyn, are you okay? You sound different." Something broke loose in my chest. "Laura, I think I need help. I think Richard is. I don't know how to say this without sounding crazy." "Say it anyway."
So I did.
I told her everything. The pills, the forgetfulness, the things that disappeared and reappeared, the changed presentation, the journal entries I didn't write, the phone call about Richard's appointment. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Evelyn, stop taking those pills immediately."
Right now.
"Flush them." "I already did. 3 days ago."
Good.
"Now listen to me carefully. Get a second opinion from a different doctor. Someone Richard doesn't know. And do it quietly. Don't tell him, don't tell David, don't tell anyone."
Can you do that?
"I think so. Call me after. I'm coming up there." That night, while Richard was in his study on a conference call, I did something I'd never done before. I went through his desk. My hands shook as I opened drawer after drawer, not even sure what I was looking for. I found it in a locked bottom drawer. I used a letter opener to force it open. A folder labeled Petition for Medical Evaluation, Evelyn Carter. Inside were draft documents, ready to be filed in court. Exhibits detailing my supposed mental decline. Emails I'd allegedly sent full of rambling, incoherent text. Photos of me looking disheveled, confused. Dr. Lang's preliminary reports citing cognitive decline, memory loss, possible early onset dementia. And at the bottom, a draft affidavit in Richard's handwriting. My wife Evelyn Carter poses a danger to herself and to our shared business interests. She requires immediate medical intervention, and I request emergency guardianship to ensure her safety and the preservation of our assets. I photographed every page with shaking hands. When I confronted him that night, he was in the bedroom, getting ready for bed. I held the folder between us like a shield. "What is this, Richard?" He glanced at it, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, then calculation, then concern so perfect it could have won an Oscar. "Evelyn, sweetheart, where did you find that?" "Your desk. This is a petition to declare me mentally incompetent." "Why?" "Because I'm worried about you." He took a step forward. I took one back. "You've been deteriorating for months. I've been documenting it because I knew at some point we'd need medical intervention and you'd fight it. You're proving that right now." "I'm not deteriorating. You've been drugging me. You changed my slides. You've been gaslighting me. Listen to yourself. You sound paranoid, delusional." This is exactly what I've been trying to tell Dr. Lang. Dr. Lang is your doctor, not mine. That nurse called me by mistake. I know you've been seeing him. Richard's expression shifted, just slightly. The concern dropped away, replaced by cold assessment. You've been going through my phone records. You've been trying to drive me insane. I've been trying to help you.
His voice was ice now.
And you're going to make this so much harder than it needs to be. He walked past me, picked up his phone, and dialed. Dr. Lang? Yes, we need to move up the timeline. She's becoming combative. Paranoid. I think we need to file the petition this week. I ran. I grabbed my purse, my phone, my car keys, which I'd been keeping on my person constantly, and I ran. I drove to a hotel near the airport and paid cash for a room. Then I called Laura. He's going to file to have me declared incompetent. He's going to take everything. Not if we move first. I'm driving up tonight. In the meantime, I'm texting you the name of a doctor. Dr. Anish Patel. He's a neurologist at Swedish Medical Center. He's brilliant and he's honest. Call him first thing tomorrow. That night, in the anonymous hotel room, I finally felt my mind clear. And what I saw when I looked back at the past 2 months made me want to scream. Dr. Patel's office smelled like lavender and lemon cleaner, a stark contrast to Dr. Lang's sterile chrome environment. Dr. Patel himself was in his 50s, with kind eyes and a reassuring presence that made me want to cry with relief. Ms. Carter, your friend Laura explained the situation. I want you to know that everything you tell me is confidential, and I'm here to help you get to the truth. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. I'd like to run some tests. Blood work, cognitive assessments, a full neurological exam. If someone has been medicating you improperly, we'll find evidence of it. The tests took 3 hours. At the end, Dr. Patel called me into his office with a grave expression. Ms. Carter, your cognitive function is perfect. Your memory, processing speed, executive function, all within normal to superior ranges. But your blood work shows something concerning. He turned his computer screen toward me. This is triazolam. It's a benzodiazepine sedative, extremely potent. It's occasionally used for severe insomnia, but in higher doses or combined with other medications, it can cause anterograde amnesia, which means you can't form new memories while under its influence. You'd appear conscious, functional even, but later have no recollection of what you did or said. It's sometimes called the date rape drug because of these properties. My stomach turned. That's what I've been taking? It's what's been in your system. But according to the prescription bottle you brought me, you should have been taking standard Xanax. This is something completely different. Someone has been substituting your medication. Can you prove it? In court. I can testify to what I found in your blood. The timeline, the symptoms you described, it all fits. Ms. Carter, I strongly recommend we involve the authorities. Not yet. I need more proof first. If this goes to court, I need to be bulletproof. Laura arrived that evening. We sat in the hotel room, surrounded by documents spread across the bed. I did some digging on Richard, she said. The timing is interesting. 3 months ago, he initiated meetings with several members of your foundation board about concerns regarding your health. He's been laying groundwork. He's trying to take the foundation from me. It's more than that. Look at this. She showed me a document on her laptop. He's been moving money out of Carter Technologies into offshore accounts. Small amounts, regular intervals. If he gains guardianship over you, he gains full control of your 30% stake. Combined with his 70%, he can sell the company, dissolve it, do whatever he wants. And Evelyn, there's a buyer. TechVista has been in acquisition talks. How much? The company's valued at $900 million. Even after taxes, Richard's looking at $300 million or more. But only if he controls your shares. I felt sick. I'm the only thing standing between him and that money.
Yes.
And a wife with dementia is much easier to control than a wife who might fight a divorce. That night, I barely slept. In the morning, I made a decision. I called Richard. Evelyn, where are you? I've been worried sick. I'm sorry I ran. You were right. I haven't been well. A pause. I could almost hear him recalculating. Where are you? I'll come get you. I'm at my parents'. I just needed space to think. Richard, I want to come home. I want to get help. Real help. Of course. I've already talked to Dr. Lang about a more intensive treatment plan. I trust you. Whatever you think is best. Another pause. Longer this time. I'm glad you're seeing reason. Come home tomorrow. We'll figure this out together. When I hung up, Laura was staring at me. Please tell me you have a plan. He's going to escalate. He thinks I'm compliant now. Defeated. He's going to push for that petition. And when he does, we'll be ready. Richard called an emergency board meeting for November 20th. The notification came through David, who called me with barely concealed smugness in his voice. Mr. Carter thought you should know. The board is meeting to discuss leadership transitions. Transitions? For the foundation. And he's filed paperwork for a medical evaluation. For your protection, of course. Laura and I spent the next 3 days preparing. Dr. Patel provided a complete medical report with time-stamped lab results. Laura assembled every piece of evidence I'd gathered, photos of Richard's documents, bank records she'd obtained through legal channels, the medication bottles, even the journal entries I suspected Richard had forged. The problem is proving it, Laura said. He'll claim you're paranoid, that you're building conspiracy theories. We need something undeniable. I know. And I think I have it. I'd been thinking about that phone call from Dr. Lang's office. About Richard's therapy sessions. About what might be in those notes. Laura, can you subpoena Dr. Lang's records? Not without a court order, and not unless, she stopped, eyes widening. Unless Lang voluntarily provides them. He made one mistake already, having his office call me instead of Richard. Maybe he can be convinced to make another. The night before the board meeting, I did something risky. I showed up at Dr. Lang's office at 7 p.m., right as he was leaving. Mrs. Carter, this isn't. We don't have an appointment. I know what you and Richard did. I know about the triazolam. I have blood tests proving it. And I know about Richard's sessions with you, the ones where he planned all of this. Lang's face went pale in the parking lot lights. I don't know what you're talking about. You're going to lose your license. At minimum. You might face criminal charges. Unless. I took a breath. Unless you help me. Unless you tell the truth. Richard said you'd do this. That you'd become delusional. Make accusations. Did he threaten you too? Or just pay you enough to ignore your conscience? Something in Lang's expression cracked. He said no one would get hurt. That you'd be happier with less responsibility. That the stress was killing you. He made it sound like mercy. By erasing my mind? By making me doubt my sanity. I didn't realize, not at first. By the time I understood what he was really doing, I was already complicit. He said if I backed out, he'd destroy my practice. He has connections everywhere. Then help me stop him. Before he does this to someone else. Lang stood there for a long moment, briefcase in hand, the weight of his choices visible on his face. Finally, he nodded. There's a letter. Richard wrote it months ago, sent it to me as part of his therapy. He was asking me how to make someone appear mentally ill. I kept it because I was afraid. I thought maybe someday I'd need leverage. Will you give it to me? Better. I'll give it to your lawyer. And I'll testify. It's the only way I can even begin to make this right. Dr. Patel met us at Laura's office at midnight. Lang brought copies of everything, session notes, the prescriptions he'd filled under false pretenses, financial records of the payments Richard had made to his practice. And the letter. I read it 3 times, each time feeling colder. Dr. Lang, I hope you can help me with a delicate situation. My wife has become a liability to our business interests. She's stubborn, won't agree to step down voluntarily, and a divorce would be financially devastating. I need her to appear incompetent, not permanently harmed, just confused enough that a court would grant me medical guardianship. Once I have control of her assets, I can ensure she's comfortable. She'll never need to know what happened. Can you help me achieve this outcome? I trust in your discretion and your medical expertise. Signed, Richard Carter. He signed it, I whispered. He signed it, Laura confirmed. This is our smoking gun. Dr. Patel carefully sealed the letter in an envelope. I'll hold on to this until the right moment. When Richard makes his move, we make ours. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. the next day. But that morning, everything changed. I woke to find Laura shaking me, her face grim. Richard didn't wait for the board meeting. He filed a petition for guardianship last night. Emergency hearing. Today at 10 a.m.
What?
That's in 3 hours. He's claiming you're a danger to yourself. He must have known you were preparing to fight back. We dressed in a panic. Laura in her navy power suit, me in the most professional outfit I could find. My hands shook so badly, I couldn't manage my necklace clasp. Hey, Laura grabbed my shoulders. We have everything we need. The truth is on our side. Then why am I terrified? Because you're human. But Evelyn, you're also the strongest person I know. And today you're going to prove it. The courthouse was downtown, all marble and echoing hallways. Richard was already there when we arrived, flanked by his attorney, Harrison Price, one of the most expensive lawyers in Seattle. Richard wore his courtroom face, concerned husband, burdened by difficult circumstances. When he saw me, he actually smiled. Evelyn, thank God. I was worried you wouldn't come. We can get through this together. Stay away from me. His smile never wavered. You see, he said to Harrison loud enough for nearby people to hear. This hostility, it's part of the illness. We were ushered into Judge Martinez's courtroom. She was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no tolerance for nonsense, according to Laura's quick briefing. This is an emergency petition for temporary guardianship, Judge Martinez began. Mr. Carter, your attorney may present your case. Harrison Price stood. Your Honor, this is a tragic situation. Mrs. Evelyn Carter is a brilliant woman who has been suffering from progressive cognitive decline over the past several months. Her husband, Mr. Richard Carter, has exhausted all other options and now seeks temporary guardianship to ensure she receives proper medical care. He presented Dr. Lang's falsified reports like they were gospel truth. Descriptions of my episodes, the altered emails, photos of me looking disheveled at various times. The Foundation board members testifying that I'd become unreliable, confused during presentations, unable to manage basic tasks. Most concerning, Harrison continued, are Mrs. Carter's recent behaviors. Paranoid accusations against her husband, fleeing their home, making wild claims that Mr. Carter has somehow been poisoning her. Because he has been, I said loudly. Judge Martinez's gaze shifted to me. Mrs. Carter, you'll have your opportunity to speak. Richard took the stand. I watched him transform into the perfect concerned spouse, voice breaking at just the right moments, eyes misting with manufactured tears. I love my wife, Your Honor, but I've watched her disappear in front of me. She forgets entire conversations. She hides things and accuses others of taking them. Last week, she broke into my personal files, convinced I was plotting against her. It broke my heart, but I knew I had to act before she hurt herself. Liar, I whispered. She's become aggressive, Richard continued. Combative. I'm afraid of what she might do if she doesn't get help. Judge Martinez made notes. Does Mrs. Carter have representation? Laura stood. Yes, Your Honor. Laura Chun for Mrs. Carter. We contest this petition in its entirety and can demonstrate that Mr. Carter has engaged in systematic psychological abuse and fraud. Harrison scoffed. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of paranoid conspiracy thinking that demonstrates Mrs. Carter's compromised mental state. Save it, Counselor. Judge Martinez interrupted. Ms. Chun, what evidence do you have? Dr. Anish Patel is here to testify. He's a neurologist from Swedish Medical Center who examined Mrs. Carter independently. He can speak to her actual mental state. Dr. Patel was sworn in. He presented his findings calmly, methodically. The blood tests showing triazolam, the cognitive assessments proving my mental fitness, the clear evidence of drug-induced amnesia. In my professional opinion, Dr. Patel concluded, Mrs. Carter is not suffering from dementia or any cognitive disorder. She has been deliberately drugged with a substance known to cause memory loss and confusion. This is not a case requiring guardianship. This is a case requiring a police investigation. I watched Richard's face. The concern was gone, replaced by cold calculation. Harrison tried to discredit Dr. Patel's findings, suggesting I'd manipulated the tests or that the blood work had been tampered with. But Judge Martinez was looking at Richard now with increasing skepticism. Mr. Carter, did you know Dr. Lang personally before he began treating your wife? Richard hesitated just a fraction too long. We'd met socially, yes. And have you paid him directly for any services? I handled the medical billing, as one does for their spouse. That wasn't my question. Have you paid Dr. Lang outside of insurance billing? Another hesitation. I may have made some supplementary payments. Your Honor, Laura stood. We have bank records showing Mr. Carter paid Dr. Lang over $200,000 in the past 3 months, all listed as consulting fees. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Martinez banged her gavel. That was for business consulting, Richard said quickly. Separate from Evelyn's treatment. Then why did Dr. Lang file the bills under medical service codes? Laura produced more documents. And why do his appointment records show Mr. Carter as a patient, not Mrs. Carter? Richard's attorney was on his feet. Your Honor, this is... But Judge Martinez held up her hand. She was reading the bank records Laura had submitted, her expression growing darker by the second. This hearing is beginning to look less like a medical intervention and more like something else entirely. Ms. Chun, you mentioned additional evidence. Yes, Your Honor. We have testimony from Dr. Lang himself, who is outside this courtroom right now, ready to admit his role in falsifying Mrs. Carter's medical records at Mr. Carter's direction. The color drained from Richard's face. Harrison Price was frantically whispering to him, but Richard just sat there, frozen. Additionally, Laura continued, we have financial records showing that Mr. Carter has been systematically moving marital assets into offshore accounts. We believe this guardianship petition is part of a larger scheme to gain control of Mrs. Carter's stake in Carter Technologies, a stake worth approximately $270 million. Judge Martinez set down her papers. Mr. Price, I'm going to give your client one opportunity to withdraw this petition voluntarily. Because if we proceed and I find evidence of fraud or abuse, I will not only deny the petition, I will refer this matter to the district attorney's office. Harrison leaned over to Richard. Their whispered conversation was heated, urgent. Finally, Richard shook his head. My client maintains his petition, Your Honor. Mrs. Carter's mental health is our primary concern. Then bring in Dr. Lang, Judge Martinez ordered. The bailiff opened the courtroom doors. But instead of Dr. Lang walking through them alone, he was accompanied by someone else, Dr. Patel, carrying a large manila envelope. The two doctors approached the bench together. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear over the rushing in my ears. Your Honor, Dr. Patel said, his voice carrying through the hushed courtroom. Dr. Lang has provided documentation that fundamentally changes the nature of these proceedings. Before he testifies, I believe you need to see this. He handed the envelope to Judge Martinez. She opened it, pulled out the contents, and began to read. I watched her eyebrows rise, watched her lips thin into a tight line. She read for what felt like hours but was probably only 2 minutes. Then she looked up, directly at Richard. Mr. Carter, I'm reading a letter here. A letter that appears to bear your signature. A letter addressed to Dr. Lang, dated September 2nd of this year, 3 weeks before your wife's alleged mental decline began. She paused, and the silence was deafening. Would you like to explain why you wrote to Dr. Lang asking him, and I quote, to help make my wife appear incompetent? The courtroom exploded. Richard shot to his feet, his face twisted with rage. That's a forgery. This is a setup. She's behind all of this. Sit down, Mr. Carter. Judge Martinez's voice cracked like a whip. Dr. Lang, please take the stand. I watched Dr. Lang walk to the witness stand, his face gray with guilt and fear. After he was sworn in, Laura approached him. Dr. Lang, did Richard Carter write the letter that's been submitted to this court? Yes. Did he ask you to falsify medical records stating his wife was mentally incompetent? Yes. Did he pay you to prescribe medication that would cause memory loss and confusion? Yes. Dr. Lang's voice was barely a whisper now. He told me it was temporary, that Mrs. Carter would be happier without the stress of running the foundation. He made it sound like I'd be helping her. But then I realized, his voice broke. I realized he was systematically destroying her mind, and I was the weapon he was using. I felt tears streaming down my face, but I didn't wipe them away. I wanted everyone to see them. I wanted the truth to be witnessed. Dr. Lang. Judge Martinez interjected, "Are you aware that what you've described constitutes multiple felonies? Medical fraud, conspiracy, possibly attempted manslaughter." Yes, Your Honor. I'm prepared to face the consequences. It's the only way to stop what I helped start. Richard was on his feet again. This is absurd. He's lying to save himself. Evelyn obviously got to him, paid him off. Mr. Carter. Judge Martinez's voice was ice. One more outburst, and I will hold you in contempt.
Seat.
Down. Harrison physically pulled Richard back into his chair. I could see Richard's mind racing, trying to find an angle, a way out. But there wasn't one. The truth was laid bare in front of everyone. Laura called me to the stand. As I walked past Richard, he grabbed my arm, not hard enough to hurt, but enough to make me stop. "You're going to regret this," he hissed. "Everything you have, I gave you. Without me, you're nothing." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then up at his face, the face I'd once loved, now twisted with malice and desperation. "Let go of my wife." The voice came from the gallery. I turned to see my father standing, his face flushed with anger. "Right now." Richard released me. I continued to the stand, sat down, and placed my hand on the Bible. The oath I swore felt sacred, important. To tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. "Mrs. Carter," Laura began gently, "can you tell the court what the past 3 months have been like for you?"
So I did.
I told them about the pills that made me forget entire days, about the things that disappeared and reappeared, designed to make me doubt my own memory, about the isolation as my friends and assistant were systematically removed from my life, about the altered presentation that made me look incompetent in front of my board, about finding the petition in Richard's desk, the offshore accounts, the plan to take everything I'd built. I thought I was losing my mind, I said, my voice steady despite the tears. I would wake up and not know what day it was. I'd find things in places I'd never put them. I'd see concern on everyone's faces and think something was wrong with me. And the whole time, Richard was there, being the perfect husband, suggesting doctors, managing my medication, handling my schedule. I trusted him completely, and he used that trust to try to erase me. Why do you think he did this? Laura asked.
Money. Control.
Power. I looked directly at Richard. He needed my shares in Carter Technologies to complete a sale to TechVista. But I would never have agreed to sell the company my money helped build. So he decided to make me disappear without actually killing me. He tried to murder my mind instead. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of the court reporter's fingers on the keys. "Mrs. Carter," Judge Martinez said, "I've seen many troubling cases in my career, but this is among the worst. The systematic, calculated cruelty described here is staggering." She turned to Richard. "Mr. Carter, I am denying your petition for guardianship. Furthermore, I am issuing a temporary restraining order. You are not to contact Mrs. Carter or come within 500 feet of her. I am also referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation. Finally, I am ordering that all marital assets be frozen, pending a full accounting." "Your Honor, you can't," Harrison began. "I absolutely can, Counselor. And if you'd like to argue the point, I'll hold you in contempt right alongside your client." She banged her gavel. "We're adjourned. Mr. Carter, the bailiff will serve you with the restraining order. I suggest you comply with it." As everyone began to stand, Richard turned to me one last time. The mask had completely fallen away. What I saw in his eyes was pure hatred. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "Yes," I replied, matching his tone. "It is." Laura and I walked out of the courtroom together, my parents close behind. Dr. Patel was waiting in the hallway, along with Dr. Lang, who looked like he might collapse at any moment. "Thank you," I said to both of them. "Thank you for telling the truth." "I should never have let it get this far," Dr. Lang said, his voice hollow. "I knew better." "I'm so sorry. Your apology doesn't undo what you did," I told him. "But your testimony today might save the next woman from going through what I did. That has to count for something." Outside the courthouse, reporters were waiting. Someone had tipped them off, probably someone from the courtroom. Cameras flashed as Laura and I emerged into the afternoon sunlight. "Mrs. Carter, did your husband try to have you declared insane? Mrs. Carter, is it true he was drugging you? Mrs. Carter, what happens to Carter Technologies now?" Laura stepped forward. "Mrs. Carter will be releasing a full statement in the coming days. For now, she's grateful that the truth has come to light, and she looks forward to rebuilding her life and her foundation." We pushed through the crowd to Laura's car. As we drove away, I looked back at the courthouse steps. Richard was being swarmed by reporters, Harrison trying unsuccessfully to push through. He looked up, and our eyes met through the car window. For 3 months, he'd made me feel small,
Confused.
broken. He tried to convince me I was losing my mind, that I couldn't trust my own thoughts or memories. He tried to erase me while keeping my body alive as a shell he could control. But I had survived. I had fought back. And I had won. The truth was out now, spreading through the city like wildfire. Richard Carter, the brilliant CEO, the charitable husband, was revealed as a monster who tried to psychologically murder his own wife for money. "Where to?" Laura asked. I thought about the penthouse, Richard's territory, filled with his things and his choices and his control. I thought about the foundation office where David probably still sat, Richard's spy. I thought about all the places I'd been that were defined by him, shaped by him, owned by him. "A hotel for now," I said. "Somewhere he's never been. Somewhere that's just mine." And then I smiled, feeling it reach my eyes for the first time in months. "And then we finish this. We make sure he faces consequences for what he did. And then I take back everything he tried to steal, starting with myself." As we drove through Seattle, past the glittering towers and the gray waters of Puget Sound, I felt something shift inside me. The fog that had clouded my mind for months was completely gone. The doubt, the confusion, the fear. All of it was lifting like morning mist. I was Evelyn Carter. I had built a foundation that helped thousands of people. I had earned my place in this world through intelligence and hard work and vision. Richard had tried to take that from me, but he'd failed. And now everyone knew exactly what he was. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Turn on the news." Laura pulled over and we watched on her phone as a breaking news alert flashed across the screen. Tech CEO Richard Carter accused of gaslighting wife in guardianship scheme. The story was everywhere, local news, national news, social media exploding with outrage. The reporter on screen was standing outside Carter Technologies headquarters, describing how the board had called an emergency meeting. Sources say board members are shocked and horrified by today's revelations, the reporter said. Questions are being raised about Carter's fitness to lead the company and whether he'll face criminal charges. I watched Richard's empire begin to crumble on a phone screen in a parked car, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. The war wasn't over. There would be more battles ahead, the criminal investigation, the divorce proceedings, the fight for my foundation, the struggle to reclaim my reputation. Richard wouldn't go down without a fight, and he had resources and connections, and a desperate need to win. But so did I. And I had something he didn't, the truth. "Ready to go?" Laura asked. "Yes," I said. "But first, there's one more thing I need to do." I pulled out my journal, the real one, the one I'd been keeping hidden since I stopped taking the pills. I turned to a fresh page and wrote, November 20th. Today, I stopped being a victim. Today, I became a survivor. Today, I remembered who I am. And whatever comes next, I'm ready for it. The silence in the courtroom was suffocating. Judge Martinez held Richard's letter between her fingers like it was contaminated, her eyes scanning the words again, as if she couldn't quite believe what she was reading. I watched her face harden with each passing second. "Mr. Carter," she said finally, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade, "this letter is dated September 2nd. According to your own petition, your wife's mental decline didn't begin until mid-September. Yet here you are, 3 weeks earlier, asking Dr. Lang how to make someone appear mentally ill." Richard's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. It was the first time I'd ever seen him truly speechless. "Your Honor, that letter has been taken out of context." Harrison Price tried to intervene, but Judge Martinez held up her hand. "Counselor, I'm reading your client's own words. There is no context that makes this acceptable." She read aloud, her voice dripping with disgust. "I can't let Evelyn take control. She'll destroy everything I've built. I'll have to make her seem unstable." Does that sound out of context to you? The gallery erupted in shocked whispers. I heard my mother gasp behind me. A reporter in the back row was typing furiously on her phone. Richard finally found his voice. I was venting. I was frustrated. Everyone says things they don't mean when they're upset. "Did you mean it when you paid Dr. Lang $200,000? Laura interjected. "Did you mean it when you had him prescribe triazolam instead of Xanax? Did you mean it when you filed this guardianship petition?" "This is entrapment," Richard shouted, his carefully constructed facade finally shattering. "She set this up. She manipulated Lang into giving her that letter." "Mr. Carter." Judge Martinez's voice was ice. "I am ordering a 15-minute recess. When we return, you will have composed yourself, or I will have the bailiff remove you from this courtroom. Do you understand?" Richard's jaw clenched so tight, I could see the muscles jumping. "Yes, Your Honor." As the judge left the bench, I felt Laura's hand squeeze mine. "We've got him," she whispered. "That letter is everything." But in the hallway during recess, Richard found me. He shouldn't have. His attorney was supposed to keep him away, but he cornered me near the water fountain, his face twisted with rage. "You think you're so smart," he hissed, close enough that I could smell his cologne, the scent that used to make me feel safe. "You think you've won. But I will destroy you for this. I'll drag your name through every court in this state. I'll make sure everyone knows you're an unstable, vindictive." "Mr. Carter." A bailiff appeared, pulling him back. "Step away from Mrs. Carter right now, or you'll be held in contempt." Richard's eyes never left mine. "This isn't over, Evelyn. You'll regret making me your enemy." "I didn't make you my enemy, Richard," I said quietly. "You made yourself mine the day you decided I was worth more to you drugged and confused than alive and whole." The bailiff escorted him away. I leaned against the wall, my hands shaking, but not from fear this time. From fury. From the sheer audacity of him acting like the victim when he'd spent months systematically trying to erase my mind. When court resumed, Dr. Patel took the stand again. Laura asked him to walk through his findings one more time, but in more detail. Mrs. Carter came to me lucid, articulate, and deeply concerned about her mental state, Dr. Patel explained. But when I ran cognitive assessments, she scored in the superior range for every category: memory, processing speed, executive function, verbal reasoning. This is not a woman experiencing cognitive decline. "Then how do you explain the symptoms she was experiencing?" Laura asked. "The blood work tells us everything. Triazolam, in the doses that were in her system, causes anterograde amnesia. The brain can't form new memories. A person under its influence can appear functional. They can walk, talk, even complete complex tasks, but later have no memory of it. This creates the perfect illusion of mental illness." Could someone fake these symptoms?
No.
The drug metabolites don't lie. Someone was administering this to Mrs. Carter without her knowledge or consent. Harrison Price stood for cross-examination, but I could see his heart wasn't in it. He was a smart lawyer, and smart lawyers know when they're defending the indefensible. "Dr. Patel, isn't it possible Mrs. Carter took this medication herself? Perhaps she was trying to." "Trying to what, counselor?" Dr. Patel's voice was sharp. "Frame her own husband? by drugging herself into genuine confusion and memory loss. That theory makes no medical or logical sense. Harrison had no response to that. The final nail in Richard's coffin came from an unexpected source. The bailiff approached the bench and handed Judge Martinez a note. She read it, her eyebrows rising. It appears we have a witness who is not on the original list. A Mr. David Chen, who worked as Mrs. Carter's assistant. He's asking to testify. I felt my stomach drop. David, Richard's spy, the assistant who'd replaced Maya, who'd changed my presentation slides. What could he possibly want to say? But when David took the stand, he wouldn't look at Richard. He looked at me instead, and what I saw in his eyes was guilt. Mr. Chen, Laura began carefully, how did you come to work for Mrs. Carter? Mr. Carter hired me. He told me Mrs. Carter was having problems, memory issues, confusion, and that he needed someone to help her while protecting her dignity. He said I'd be helping both of them. What did he ask you to do? David took a breath. He asked me to document every mistake she made. Every time she seemed confused or forgot something. He wanted a record. At first, I thought I was helping build a case for getting her medical treatment. But then, he paused. Then he asked me to create mistakes. To alter documents, change meeting times, move things around her office. He said it was to demonstrate the pattern to doctors. The courtroom was completely silent. Did you do what he asked?
Yes.
I'm ashamed to say I did. I changed her presentation slides the day of the board meeting. I moved things around her house when I delivered documents. His voice cracked. I even forged some of her journal entries. Mr. Carter gave me a sample of her handwriting and told me what to write. Things that made her sound confused, paranoid. I felt tears streaming down my face. All those times I'd questioned my own sanity, wondering if I was losing my mind. And it had been real. Someone really had been manipulating my reality. Why are you testifying today, Mr. Chen? Laura asked gently. Because after the hearing was announced, I looked into Mr. Carter's financial records. He'd asked me to file some documents, and I saw the offshore accounts, the money transfers. I realized this wasn't about helping Mrs. Carter get treatment. This was about stealing everything from her. And I can't be part of that anymore.
Richard was on his feet, shouting.
You're fired. You hear me? You'll never work in this city again. Mr. Carter. Judge Martinez's gavel cracked like thunder. Bailiff, remove Mr. Carter from this courtroom.
Now.
I watched as they escorted Richard out, still shouting threats, his face purple with rage. The carefully constructed mask of the concerned husband had completely shattered, revealing the monster underneath. Judge Martinez waited until the doors closed behind him before speaking. I've seen many disturbing cases in my 20 years on the bench, she said quietly. But I have never seen such calculated, systematic psychological abuse. Mrs. Carter, on behalf of this court, I apologize that you had to endure this for as long as you did. Her words broke something open inside me. I sobbed, not delicately, but in great heaving gasps, as months of doubt and fear and confusion finally released their hold on me. This court finds no merit whatsoever in Mr. Carter's petition for guardianship, Judge Martinez continued. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. The evidence suggests multiple felonies, fraud, conspiracy, assault by poisoning, and attempted theft. Mr. Carter will face the full consequences of his actions. She turned to Dr. Lang, who sat pale and sweating in the witness section. Dr. Lang, you will surrender your medical license pending investigation by the State Medical Board. You may also face criminal charges. However, your cooperation today will be noted in any proceedings. Then she looked at me. Mrs. Carter, I'm granting you immediate full control of all marital assets pending divorce proceedings. I'm also issuing a permanent restraining order against Mr. Carter. He is not to contact you, come near you, or speak about you publicly. Do you have any questions? Just one, Your Honor, I said, my voice still shaky. What happens now?
Now.
She smiled, the first warmth I'd seen from her. Now you go rebuild your life. You take back everything he tried to steal. And you show the world that psychological abuse is still abuse, and abusers will be held accountable. The days after the hearing blurred together. The story exploded across every news outlet, local, national, international. Tech CEO's dark secret. How Richard Carter tried to gaslight wife for fortune, screamed one headline. Another. The perfect crime that failed, inside a modern psychological nightmare. My phone rang constantly. Reporters, well-wishers, victims of similar abuse reaching out to tell me their stories. I had to change my number twice. But the most important call came from the district attorney's office.
Mrs. Carter, Ivy da Monica Foster.
I'd like to discuss building a criminal case against your husband. We met in her office downtown, a space that somehow managed to be both institutional and warm. DA Foster was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and an intensity that made me feel like she actually cared. The evidence you've provided is substantial, she said, spreading documents across her desk. The letter, the financial records, Dr. Patel's medical findings, David Chen's testimony. But I want to be honest with you, Richard Carter has resources. He'll hire the best defense attorneys money can buy. This won't be easy. I don't need easy, I told her. I need justice. Then we need Dr. Lang's full cooperation. His testimony is crucial. Dr. Lang's full confession came 3 days later, in a deposition that lasted 6 hours. I wasn't present, but Laura was, and she told me everything. He broke down completely, Laura said over coffee. Told them everything, how Richard first approached him at their country club, how the payment started small and grew larger, how Richard convinced him it was victimless. She'll just be less stressed, Richard told him. Happier, even. Did he believe that? At first, maybe. But Lang said he started having doubts when Richard asked him to increase the dosage. When he expressed concern, Richard threatened to report him to the medical board for previous violations. Apparently Lang had some boundary issues with other patients years ago. Richard had done his research. I shook my head, marveling at the calculation of it all. He picked his weapon carefully.
He did.
Lang also revealed something new. Richard had been planning this for over a year. Long before September. He'd been researching psychological abuse techniques, studying cases of medical gaslighting. This wasn't impulse, Evelyn. This was premeditated. The public revelation of Dr. Lang's full confession hit the news that evening. I watched it from my hotel room, my parents sitting on either side of me. The reporter stood outside Dr. Lang's now-shuttered practice. Dr. Marcus Lang has provided prosecutors with a detailed account of how he helped Richard Carter systematically drug and manipulate his wife, Evelyn Carter. In a statement released today, Lang said, "I violated every oath I took as a physician. I allowed myself to become a weapon in someone else's hands, and an innocent woman suffered because of my cowardice. I will spend the rest of my life trying to atone for what I've done." "Do you believe him?" my mother asked quietly. "I believe he's sorry he got caught," I said. "But I also believe his guilt is real. He's a weak man who got caught up in something he didn't fully understand until it was too late. That doesn't excuse what he did, but it makes him different from Richard." "How so?" "Richard knew exactly what he was doing. Every step of the way, he chose cruelty. Lang was a coward, but Richard is a monster. My father put his arm around me. I should have seen it sooner. The way he was isolating you, the way you were changing. Dad, he fooled everyone. That was the whole point." The board of Carter Technologies released a statement the next day. In light of recent revelations, Richard Carter has been placed on indefinite administrative leave. An independent investigation into company finances and practices is underway. But it was the statement from TechVista that really hurt Richard where it mattered most. TechVista Corporation has withdrawn its acquisition offer for Carter Technologies. "We cannot in good conscience proceed with a transaction involving an individual accused of such serious criminal conduct. Our thoughts are with Mrs. Evelyn Carter during this difficult time." His $900 million payday, the whole reason for this nightmare, had evaporated. Laura called me that evening, barely containing her excitement. "The board wants to meet with you. They're considering removing Richard entirely and want to discuss your role in the company." My role? I've never been involved in running Carter Technologies. No, but you own 30%. And right now, you're the only Carter they trust. They want to know what you want to do with your shares. What I wanted was complicated. Part of me wanted nothing to do with Richard's company, wanted to sell my shares and walk away from everything connected to him. But another part, the part that was tired of being victimized, wanted to stay. Wanted to prove I belonged there, that I'd earned my place. Tell them I'll meet with them, I said. But not to discuss selling. To discuss how we rebuild trust. The meeting was set for the following week. In the meantime, the criminal investigation moved forward with frightening speed. Richard was arrested on November 28th, 1 week after the hearing. I watched it happen on the news. Richard in handcuffs, his usual confidence replaced by barely suppressed fury, reporters shouting questions as police led him to a squad car. "Mr. Carter, do you have anything to say to your wife?" "This is a witch hunt," he shouted back. "My wife is mentally unstable, and she's manipulated everyone into believing her delusions." Even in handcuffs, even facing criminal charges, he couldn't stop lying. The charges were extensive: conspiracy to commit fraud, assault with a controlled substance, attempted theft, perjury, and witness tampering. Bail was set at $5 million. Richard posted it within hours. But the damage to his reputation was irreparable. Carter Technology stock had plummeted 40%. Investors were fleeing. Business partners were canceling contracts. The empire Richard had built was crumbling around him. And I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication. Just emptiness where my love for him used to be. Richard's world collapsed faster than I could have imagined. Within 2 weeks of his arrest, 3 board members resigned from Carter Technologies. 2 major investors filed lawsuits claiming Richard had misrepresented the company's financial health. The SEC opened an investigation into his offshore accounts. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source, his own brother. I'd only met James Carter twice, brief encounters at family events. He lived in Boston, ran his own consulting firm, and had always seemed uncomfortable around Richard.
Now I understood why.
James reached out through Laura, asking to meet with me. I was hesitant but curious. We met at a quiet cafe in Capitol Hill. James was older than Richard by 5 years, with the same sharp features but kinder eyes. "I owe you an apology," he said before I'd even sat down. I knew what my brother was capable of. Not this specifically, but I knew he was dangerous. "Tell me." Growing up, Richard couldn't stand anyone being better than him at anything. If I got a better grade, he'd sabotage my homework. If our sister won an award, he'd start rumors about her. My parents called it competitive drive and praised him for it. But it was never ambition, it was a need to destroy anyone who threatened his ego. He took a sip of coffee, his hands shaking slightly. When I heard he was getting married, I tried to warn our parents. I told them Richard wasn't capable of loving someone. He was only capable of owning them. They accused me of jealousy. "We haven't spoken in 3 years. Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I have evidence. Emails, financial records, recorded conversations. Richard wasn't just planning to take your foundation and company shares. He was planning to have you institutionalized permanently. He'd already researched facilities, spoken to administrators about long-term care for cognitive decline. He was going to make you disappear." The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. He was going to lock me away? For the rest of your life. And he would have had complete control of everything: your money, your foundation, your freedom. All of it. James slid a folder across the table. "Give this to the DA. It proves premeditation, proves this was about more than just money. This was about complete annihilation of who you are." I couldn't open the folder. "Not yet. Why didn't you come forward sooner?" "Because I'm a coward." His voice broke. "I told myself it wasn't my business, that you were an adult who could take care of yourself. But the truth is, I was afraid of Richard. I've always been afraid of him. And I let that fear stop me from protecting you. I'm sorry." I took the folder. "Thank you for this. And James, you're not a coward anymore." The evidence James provided changed everything. The DA filed additional charges: conspiracy to commit kidnapping and deprivation of civil rights. Richard's bail was revoked. This time, when they arrested him, he wouldn't be going home. The trial was set for March, for months away. In the meantime, I had my own rebuilding to do. The board meeting at Carter Technologies was surreal. I walked into a conference room I'd never been in, faced people who'd only known me as Richard's wife, and demanded respect I'd never had to demand before. Mrs. Carter, we want to be clear. We had no idea what Richard was doing to you. The board chair, Margaret Westfield, began. If we had known, you would have what? Stopped him. I kept my voice level. Several of you testified in court that I seemed confused, unreliable. You enabled this by being willing to believe I was incompetent rather than investigating what was really happening. Uncomfortable silence filled the room. But I continued. I'm not here to assign blame. I'm here to discuss the future. Carter Technologies needs leadership. It needs someone the public can trust. And right now, that's not going to be anyone named Carter. We agree, Margaret said. We're in talks with several potential CEOs. I'm not finished. I'm not interested in running this company. Technology isn't my passion, but I am interested in reshaping what this company stands for. I'm proposing we establish an ethics board, mandatory reporting structures for abuse, and a charitable arm focused on supporting victims of domestic violence. I want Carter Technologies to be known for something other than my husband's crimes. The board exchanged glances. Finally, Margaret nodded. We'd welcome your involvement, Mrs. Carter. Then I'll stay. Not as CEO, but as a board member focused on ethics and corporate responsibility. And I'm keeping my shares, all of them. After the meeting, Laura pulled me aside. That was incredible. You walked in there and owned the room. I'm tired of being afraid, I told her. Richard spent months making me question everything about myself, my memory, my competence, my sanity. I'm done questioning. I know who I am now. The media attention began to shift. Instead of being portrayed as a victim, I was being recognized as a survivor who'd fought back. Interview requests poured in. A publisher reached out about writing a memoir. A documentary filmmaker wanted to tell my story. But the most meaningful contact came from a support group for victims of coercive control. We've been watching your case, the coordinator told me over the phone. You've given so many survivors hope. They see themselves in your story, the gaslighting, the isolation, the systematic destruction of self-worth. Would you consider speaking at one of our meetings? I thought about the months I'd spent questioning my own mind, the terror of not being able to trust my own memories. I thought about all the people going through that right now, being told by the person who was supposed to love them that they were crazy, broken, worthless. Yes, I said. I'd be honored. The meeting was in a community center in Ballard. 23 people sat in a circle, mostly women, all with the same haunted look I'd seen in my own mirror 3 months ago. I told them my story. Not the sanitized version from the news, but the real version. The shame of doubting myself, the humiliation of finding my keys in the freezer, the terror of waking up with no memory of the morning. The way Richard would look at me with such convincing concern while destroying me from the inside. The hardest part, I said, wasn't the actual abuse. It was realizing I'd loved someone capable of such calculated cruelty. It was accepting that the man I married never really existed. He was always just a mask over a monster. A woman in her 50s raised her hand, tears streaming down her face. How did you stop doubting yourself? How did you know you weren't actually crazy? I didn't, not at first. But I started paying attention to the pattern. Things only went missing when Richard was around. I only had memory gaps after taking medication he'd arranged. Once I stopped taking the pills and started documenting everything, the symptoms disappeared. The gaslighting only works if you're isolated and confused. Break the isolation, clear the confusion, and the truth becomes obvious. But what if no one believes you? Another woman asked. Then you keep telling the truth anyway. You document everything. You find allies. You trust your own reality even when everyone else tells you you're wrong. The truth has power. It just takes time for that power to show itself. After the meeting, several people waited to talk to me privately. Each one had a story eerily similar to mine: the pills, the missing items, the concerned partner, who was actually the abuser. Some were still trapped. Others had escaped but were struggling to rebuild. "You gave me hope," one young woman said, gripping my hands. "If you can survive this and come out the other side, maybe I can too." "You can," I told her. "You absolutely can. And you don't have to do it alone." 3 months later, I stood in the offices of what was now called the Carter Truth Initiative, formerly the Carter Foundation, renamed to reflect its new mission. The walls were painted a warm gold, and instead of Richard's corporate art, we'd hung pieces by local artists who'd survived abuse. Maya was back as my assistant, my real assistant this time. I tracked her down and apologized for not fighting harder when Richard fired her. She'd cried and told me she'd thought I'd stopped caring about her. We both cried then, mourning the friendship Richard had tried to destroy. "You have 3 interviews today," Maya said, pulling up my calendar. People magazine at 10, NPR at noon, and that Swedish documentary crew at 3. Also, Dr. Patel called. He wants to discuss the mental health advocacy program you're funding. Tell him I'll call him this afternoon. And Maya? Thank you for coming back. Where else would I be? This is important work we're doing. The work had become my salvation. The foundation now focused exclusively on supporting victims of coercive control and gaslighting. We funded legal services, therapy, emergency housing. We'd helped 37 people escape abusive situations in just 2 months. The media attention had been overwhelming at first, but I'd learned to use it. Every interview was a chance to educate people about psychological abuse, to explain that you don't need bruises to be a victim, that the mind can be battered just as brutally as the body. During the People magazine interview, the reporter asked the inevitable question, "Do you hate Richard Carter?" I considered my answer carefully. I hate what he did. I hate that he saw me as an obstacle to overcome rather than a person to love. But I don't spend my energy hating him anymore. That would give him power he doesn't deserve. Instead, I focus on healing and helping others heal. Do you think you'll ever trust anyone again? I'm learning to trust myself again first. That's the real journey. Richard's trial began in March, as scheduled. I attended every day, sitting in the gallery with Laura beside me. Richard wouldn't look at me, but I looked at him plenty. I needed to see him held accountable. The prosecution built their case methodically. Dr. Lang testified again, walking through every prescription, every payment, every lie. David Chin explained how he'd altered documents and forged journal entries. Dr. Patel presented the medical evidence. James Carter shared emails proving premeditation. And I testified. For 6 hours over 2 days, I walked the jury through my nightmare. Richard's defense tried to paint me as vindictive, as a spurned wife seeking revenge. They suggested I'd orchestrated the whole thing to steal Richard's company. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the jury saw through it. On March 29th, after 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with guilty verdicts on all charges. Richard was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The judge, a different one this time, was merciless in her remarks. "Mr. Carter, you systematically destroyed your wife's sense of reality for financial gain. You weaponized medicine, trust, and love itself. You represent the worst kind of domestic abuser, one who leaves no visible scars but causes profound psychological damage. This court hopes your sentence sends a message that such abuse will not be tolerated." As they led Richard away in handcuffs, he finally looked at me. I expected anger, hatred. Instead, I saw something like confusion, as if he genuinely couldn't understand how everything had gone so wrong for him. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, but I also felt free. The divorce was finalized 2 months later. I got the foundation, my shares in Carter Technologies, and enough assets to fund my advocacy work for decades. Richard got his sentence and his shame. On a warm day in June, I stood at the podium in the Foundation's new headquarters, a beautiful old building in Fremont that we'd renovated with light and openness. We were hosting our first major fundraiser since the rebranding. A year ago, I told the assembled donors and survivors, I was told I was losing my mind. I was medicated into confusion, isolated from friends, and systematically convinced that I couldn't trust my own thoughts or memories. My husband tried to erase me while keeping my body alive as something he could control. I paused, looking around the room. But I survived. And I learned something crucial. The truth is more powerful than any lie, no matter how carefully constructed. When we stop doubting ourselves, when we trust our own reality and find allies who believe us, we become unbreakable. The applause was deafening. After the event, I met with Dr. Patel in my office. He'd become more than my doctor. He'd become a friend and partner in the Foundation's mental health initiatives. "I have something for you," he said, handing me a folder. "The preliminary results from our mental health technology pilot program. The app that helps victims document evidence of gaslighting. It's working. We've already had 3 users gather enough proof to file protective orders." I flipped through the results, feeling something warm expand in my chest. This is exactly what I hoped for. Technology used to protect instead of harm. "You're changing lives, Evelyn. You took your worst experience and transformed it into hope for others." "We're changing lives," I corrected. I couldn't do this alone. That evening, I drove to my new apartment, a place Richard had never been, decorated with my choices and filled with my things. I poured a glass of wine and stood on my balcony, watching the sun set over Lake Union. My phone buzzed. A text from Laura. "Board approved your proposal. Carter Technologies is establishing a $50 million fund for domestic violence organizations. You did it." I smiled, feeling the last piece of something settle into place. Richard had tried to take everything from me, my mind, my money, my foundation, my freedom. Instead, I'd taken his company's name and transformed it into something that would help thousands of women escape situations like mine. I pulled out my journal, the real one, the one I'd kept through everything, and turned to a fresh page. June 14th. Today, I realized I'm not just surviving anymore.
I'm thriving.
I built something beautiful out of something terrible. I found my voice, my strength, my purpose. Richard tried to destroy me, but instead, he showed me exactly how strong I really am. I paused, pen hovering over the page, then added one final line. I am Evelyn Carter. I am whole. I am free. And I am just beginning. The city lights began to twinkle on as darkness fell, but I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. I'd survived the darkest thing I could imagine, and I'd emerged on the other side transformed. Not broken, not bitter, but unbreakable. And whatever came next, I knew I could face it. Because I'd faced the worst and won. The truth had set me free. And now, I would spend the rest of my life helping others find their truth, trust their reality, and reclaim their lives. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a new chapter. One I would write myself, in my own words, on my own terms. And no one would ever take that away from me again. So here's my question for you. If someone you loved tried to erase your mind, would you have recognized the signs before it was too late? Like this video if Evelyn's story moved you, and subscribe for more true stories about survival, courage, and the strength it takes to reclaim your life.